Hey everyone, Mia here from Resonance Astrology and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to take a look at the astrology of the week ahead from July 7th till July 13th. Once again, a pretty monumental week we have ahead of us, starting off with Uranus that has just entered Gemini today. And then we also have Saturn stationing retrograde end of this week. And it's also very, very monumental in the sense that this is the closest Saturn and Neptune are kind of coming together this year. They're not forming a full conjunction this year, but they're like kissing that close, you know. So this is also up. And of course, we have that Capricorn full moon. And Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which means that that Capricorn full moon that we have coming up is kind of really influenced by that dynamic that Saturn has going on with Neptune. So yeah, definitely a more emotionally complex explanation of this year. And yes, I feel like this week really just asks us to reorient, not just mentally, but also spiritually and structurally. And yes, so with this, I want to start moving us from day to day, and we are obviously going to start on Monday. Also, apologies, I'm filming this a bit later than usual. I messed up my schedule a bit, so this is why this is going up a bit later than usual. So apologies. I do feel like this week is starting off very chaotic, and I'm just, I'm living the astrology right now in this way. Because as I'm recording this, it's Monday evening here already, but Uranus has already moved into the sign of Gemini. This is the first time Uranus moved into the sign of Gemini since 1942. Technically 1941 if we want to count the first ingress as well. And so this is a whole new paradigm shift, it's like a whole new journey for Uranus. We're saying goodbye, not yet fully, from Uranus' stay in Taurus, where Uranus arguably had a much harder time, I would say, since Taurus. When we think of Taurus, we think of stability, things taking more time, and that is just not so compatible with this Uranian eccentric, explosive energy that likes to innovate. And I do feel like Uranus in the sign of Gemini, in its essence, feels a lot better. That does not mean that it's gonna be easier on us. I actually think it just means that we need to ground a lot more and stay more focused, because Uranus in Gemini is gonna be very all over the placey, and again, that line between breakdown and breakthrough can be very thin. But we are, slowly this year we are shifting into an era that is very much focused on the elements of air and fire, and Uranus was really the last planet this year to kind of do its shift. I'm very aware that we also have Jupiter in Cancer, so it's like there is still water here. But again, we are doing this shift, and next year is like we have fully entered the portal, especially when Jupiter moves into that sign of Leo. We have all the outer planets plus the two slower moving inner planets, which is Jupiter and Saturn, in fire or air signs, which is, let me say it out loud, Uranus in Gemini. It's an air sign. Pluto in Aquarius. We had another air sign. Neptune in Aries, fire sign. Saturn in Aries, fire sign. And Jupiter in Leo, fire sign. So this is what's awaiting us next year. Now we still have a bit of blessed water from Jupiter in Cancer. But yes, this new era is like officially starting now, because Uranus was the last planet we have been kind of waiting on to do its shift. Yes, and Uranus stays in a sign for 7 years, so long time coming. But again, all the outers are like really shifting gears this year, so it's really a whole matrix shift we are kind of getting, because when these slower moving planets, because Pluto stays in a sign for around, it depends, right? Pluto has a different orbit. So sorry, my cat's meowing in the background. So Pluto has a different orbit. So it stays in signs in a different length, but right now it's around like 20 years. And then Neptune stays in a sign for 14 years, Uranus for about 7 years. So you can only imagine what this means energetically. Like, we have gotten so used to... Yes, Archester, are you disturbing me again while I'm trying to film? Okay, guys, sorry, I had to let my cat out because she didn't stop to meow, and she was so peaceful these past like 1 hour here in this room. I start recording, she's like, no, now I gotta disturb Amia. So anyhow, this definitely feels a bit like Uranus and Gemini. It's like, you know, you're trying to focus, but then all of these things are coming up. So yeah, our focus is definitely gonna be a bit harder to focus on. Is that the right grammatics? I think our whole language, the way we speak, communicate, the way we educate ourselves, the way we ask questions is really gonna shift. But I think I'm diverting here because I wanted to make a point before, and then my cat started to meow, and then I got a bit like lost in the sauce. But I think the point that I wanted to make is that when the outer planets shift, all the other planets that are a bit slower moving start relating to them very differently. And that is what we are feeling on a global level. First and foremost, especially when a sign that is from a slower moving planet moves into the next sign, we usually feel the absence of that first and not yet fully what that new thing means. For example, now, yes, we have experienced kind of Neptune in Aries. We got the first insights, but still we are very much at the near beginning, and we have probably felt the absence of Neptune in Pisces a lot more than what Neptune in Aries fully is yet. So it's like still developing. Same thing is going to be now with Uranus and Gemini. So we're going to feel the absence of Uranus and Taurus probably a lot more than what Uranus and Gemini fully yet means, especially with the retrograde notions where both Uranus and Neptune, well, and also Saturn, will retrograde back into their previous signs. So the story is not yet fully finished anyways, but you know, let's not focus too much on that because right now Uranus just moved into Gemini, so we need to focus on this. And this energy is definitely a bit all over the place. I do also feel like, because today the moon's in Sagittarius and we also have Venus and Gemini trining Pluto in Aquarius, this week starts off on a like more intense, chaotic note. So if you have been feeling a bit more intense, a bit more chaotic, like, you're not alone. This week, like Monday definitely starts off with this like unsettling tone. That's the best way I could say to describe it. Obviously, Venus and Gemini trining Pluto in Aquarius is like a transformation in our relationships, our values, maybe how we want to go on and do things. I find it interesting that in a group that I was today, we were literally talking about relationships, and one woman was specifically brought up her very damaged relationship with her daughter, and a lot of it was around like her not actually being able to articulate what she fully wants and needs because there kind of no contact today, so nobody's talking to one another. But then it was like, okay, but when they are together, she feels like she's walking on pins and needles. And it's like, is that enjoyable? So there was a lot, like the talk today was a lot about like, what are relationships? Why do we need them? What do we want out of them? You know, and especially around like families, I feel like there's a sort of, we all have an image, not just families, but oftentimes there's an image of like, I'm a mother, this is my daughter, so like, what does that mean? And then like I also asked her, it's like a self-help group, and I also asked her the questions of like, because I was like, but what do you wish? Like, what would you wish for the outcome to be? And she was like, well, to have a relationship with her. And I was like, but what is that? Like, what is that wish? What should that relationship look like? And then she said something of appreciation. And I was like, okay, what is that? Like, how does appreciation look like to you in your life? I think these are all questions we can ask ourselves today on Monday. Once Venus is trining Pluto, like, what do I need? And I think it's interesting that it was about communication, because both of these air signs are so much about like communicating. They're not communicating to one another, and yet still, even if you're not communicating with someone, you're still in a relationship with them. Because she was like, I wake up every day, this is the first thing on my mind. Like they haven't talked in months, and every day she has this whole relationship with this person that she's not talking to. Isn't that interesting if you think about it? Because abstaining to talk about someone is actually putting so much attention towards the other person. So yeah, just something to think about today. I'm just sharing this because it's like coming up, but it just feels like something that might be useful to some of you as well. And then again, Moon's in Sagittarius. Moon is forming, making a few key aspects. Moon is trining Saturn and Neptune in Aries, opposing Venus in Gemini, trining Mercury in Leo, and sextiling Pluto. Also squaring Mars in Virgo. So like the Moon in Sagittarius is doing a lot of aspects today specifically. So again, just bringing in this like tensions, because there seems to be a lot of conflicting things, right? Like if we think of, okay, Moon in Sagittarius trining Saturn, Neptune, there seems to be somewhat of a like hopeful realism, or some sort of like urge to have like a spiritual fire to evoke something, to make a vision more tangible. Then we have the Venus opposition, there's a tension between optimism and maybe some like relational reality, which is very much like the talk we had today, for example. Then the trine between Mercury and Leo is like, I want to express myself and tell the truth. And then also we have that square from Mars and Virgo, which is again another more conflict about like, but what can I actually do? How can I say things so it doesn't evoke everything? So yeah, definitely starting off on a fiery note, a very catalyzing start of this week. And yes, I think today is a great day for like intellectual downloads, maybe some emotional honesty, and yeah, just like a shift in relational dynamics. I think this is really how we're starting off this week. So lots to say about Monday. Again, we're like at the end of today already, but still these energies are still in the air for like a few coming days, and we are building up for that full moon. But let's not get too much ahead of us. On Tuesday, July 8th, we have no major aspects, luckily, so we can, slow down a bit and integrate, materialize what happened on Monday. The moon is also kind of void, of course, not Hellenistically wise, but still after the moon in Sagittarius forms all these aspects, then it really doesn't for a while, and that's why we have kind of a void of course moon. So Tuesday is a more chill integrational day to basically, that's the best way I can say it. So yeah, and then on Wednesday, July 9th, we have the moon entering the sign of Capricorn. And the moon, obviously, first, what does it do? We have so many planets right now at the beginning degrees of the signs. So every time there's a new ingress, there's always like, oh, we're meeting all the planets. So, the moon enters Capricorn and immediately squares Saturn and Neptune Aries, immediately opposes Jupiter in Cancer. So there is like a weight of responsibility meeting the blur of ideals, and the question of like, our emotional body may be feeling restricted. Maybe there's an ideal and vision of how we would want to be, but we feel restricted in how we can actually go on about it. We want to speed up, and yet at the same time, maybe our body's like, no, let's slow down. And also, with Jupiter, there's an urge to maybe intentionally or unintentionally like expand on our emotions or exaggerate them. So if anything heavy comes up, it might not be what it seems like. Especially with Neptune also kind of blurring the lines just a bit here. There could be just this feeling of like Ooh. And you know what? The interesting thing about emotions is they feel timeless. We can't really measure emotions in time, but oftentimes things can feel like eternity. And I feel like that's kind of what could happen on Wednesday. You know, if something heavy arises, you could feel like, oh gosh, like this is it, like this is just how I'm gonna feel forever or a long time. And it's like, no, let's hold on, like let's not maybe exaggerate too much. But there's like this pressure that builds up for the full moon that happens on Thursday. So let's talk about Thursday, July 10th, because this is, I feel like, the more interesting day when the full moon actually happens. So yes, we have a full moon in Capricorn at 18 degrees of Capricorn, and this full moon is ruled by a Saturn in its fall. So this is the first time we're experiencing a moon, like a full moon, ruled by a Saturn in its fall. Next relation, we're going to get an Aquarius full moon. It's going to be ruled by Saturn in Aries again. But I think this is, the moon in Capricorn has a bigger connotation to it, because the moon in Capricorn is also in its detriment. So in and of itself, the Capricorn moon is a bit harsher to deal with. Now with it also being ruled by a Saturn in its fall, that is about to station direct, that is very much, kissing with Neptune right now. There is, it's just not a really feel-good moon. It's more of a threshold because Capricorn full moons usually often bring up feelings of like accountability. Where am I not being too accountable? Or where am I taking too much responsibility? Where do I need to mature more? Where am I, feeling like I'm the lone wolf and I have to do everything by myself? Where am I not setting boundaries versus where am I maybe setting too many boundaries and having walls around myself? So, but there is like a question mark, right? Because with Saturn, slowly stationing to go retrograde and kind of conjunct Neptune. So the usual structures that we have, not really reliable anymore. And so I do think they're like shifting and dissolving, and this can be quite uncomfortable because Capricorn is a sign that likes stability, and that stability is questioned right now. There's also naturally a square between Capricorn and Aries. And obviously when there is a full moon, the full moon is always opposite the sun. So there is also a dichotomy between like Capricorn and Cancer. But I do think if you want to like dive more deeply into your own chart, look at the areas in your chart that are ruled by Capricorn, Cancer, and Aries, because they're kind of going to be highlighted for this lunation. And bringing the tension, right? And all of this, I do feel like, is a major prelude to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that is going to be more present next year in 2026. Obviously, the engagement range has already been going on this entire year and even kind of briefly started last year. And this is like a major, cycle also globally and everything. There's a wonderful article that Steph, aka Lady Kazemi, wrote. Lady Kazemi on Instagram wrote on that, and I will link that down below because I feel like that article is very helpful in just dissecting that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And as much as I do want to talk about this in depth, I do want to keep this a weekly overview and not make this videos too long, because there's a lot to just be said about that Saturn-Neptune kind of conjunction in and of itself. But whatever is kind of coming up this full moon, this question mark that is coming up of these like structures that are resolving in our lives, this is really going to be much more present next year. So that's why like keep an eye out what exactly is kind of dissolving right now, because this is going to be a major theme next year. So think like spiritual beliefs, collective beliefs, structures, religious and institutional foundations. Also globally, many things are kind of being rewritten. Emotions can sometimes be a bit cold under this Capricorn full moon, or a bit scattered. But again, underneath there's a deep call for like just clarity. I feel like there's a deep call for spiritual clarity in whatever way that may look like for you, because Saturn and Neptune together call for like spiritual realism. And for me, that is in its worst case can get very like nihilistic, very like what's the point of anything. At its best can be a way of like, okay, we have these concepts, let's like make them tangible to actually do things in real life. And then like life itself becomes a spiritual practice, a spiritual purpose. Like we see God in our day-to-day lives. We see that God is when you go grocery shopping in the supermarket. And then everything starts making sense. But right, the thing is, Saturn is ruled by the opposition aspect. So whenever Saturn is at its play, there is always tension between two extremes. And Saturn in Aries especially is even like more prone to that. So, you know, one extreme is like nothing makes sense, nothing has a purpose. The other thing is like everything makes sense and everything has its purpose. And it's like, where do you go? Like, what do you decide? Because both... like whatever you decide, this is what you're going to base your life experiences on. You're going to view everything through that lens. And I do believe that it was actually Jung that said, I'm not sure, okay, I think it's Jung that said it, Carl Gustav Jung, that one of the single most important decisions that you can make in your life is whether everything is divine or not. And I do kind of agree with that sentiment of like, because all of this is going to depend on how you go through every experience in your life. If something happens, you're going to filter it through that belief lens. And so if you view that everything is divine, that's going to influence how you go on about life. If you view that nothing is divine, that's also going to influence how you go on through life. And so I do feel like this full moon is kind of highlighting these structures that we had, again putting a question mark on like, are they useful? Do we need something more grounded in reality? And in which direction is this kind of going? So yeah, let me just look at these notes more clearly if I missed something that I wanted to say. Because again, there's always so much to say about the new and full moons. The moon is just so important. And also, guys, by the way, I think I said that last week, I'm starting a new planetary series. I've already recorded the moon episode. It's like over 2 hours long. So there we talk so much about everything there is to be said about the moon. And in the beginning, we are also talking about why did I forget the name right now? The dignities, the dignities of the moon. So like the moon in Cancer in its home sign, the moon exalted in Taurus, the moon in its fall in Scorpion, the moon in its detriment in Capricorn. And so I do think that moon episode is going to be amazingly well to understand this on a deeper level. So yes, for this full moon, you know, let this full moon show you where the scaffolding is like rotting and where you're being asked to build on more honest ground. I do think it's a very like honest and realistic full moon. And then let's move on to Friday, July 11th. We have the moon entering Aquarius. This is interesting as so far that this is the first aspect Uranus and Gemini is getting. And so it's subtle, but it is prophetic. And the reason why I do think it is prophetic is because it's, we are going to get a major like Pluto, Uranus trine also next year, also starting kind of off this year already, between Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. And I think whatever happens on Friday when we have that moon to Uranus and Gemini aspect is like foreshadowing this trine. So it's like, keep your eyes out what is happening in your life, because that is like really contributing to your Aquarius Gemini story. they're in a trine, so they speak the same like Aries type of language. It's an Aries very much like mind, networks. How am I connecting? Air is very much about our relationships, and this trine really like previews the future collective shift of again, Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus trine. So it's going to be interesting what type of topics come up. I do think there's going to be a lot around artificial intelligence, AI very much on the rise. And I think that's going to be very highlighted. So whatever is kind of coming up on this moon in Aquarius, trining Uranus and Gemini, like there is going to be something up with technology, with how we are communicating, with how we are seeing reality, how things are shifting with AI. Definitely going to spark insights and give us future glimpses into, how we deal about these things. Totally. Also very nervous system-y. All of this, stay grounded that day. Then on Saturday, July 12th, we have the Sun in Cancer trining the North Node in Pisces. Moon in Aquarius trines Venus and opposes Mercury in Leo. So there's like definitely Saturday feels a more softer day than the other days, where we can potentially let our intuition guide us a bit more. And that moon trine Venus and Gemini is the urge for connection through like intellectual stimulation and maybe more playfulness. Exactly. Yeah, because Venus in Gemini is very playful, very curious, and now it just had to first endure that Pluto trine, but I think now it's getting lighthearted. And Moon opposing Mercury and Leo, there's a bit of a tug of war between this inner knowing on maybe how we want to express ourselves and the desire to declare. Aquarius Leo is often the dichotomy between doing the right thing for oneself versus doing the right thing for the collective or the group. And there isn't a right answer, right? Depending on your life, it's something different. Maybe you need to stand up for yourself, treat yourself, do things for your own good. Sometimes it's there needs to be sacrifices, and for the greater good, for the group, we gotta do this so that everyone thrives. So there's, it's there is no right answer. Depending on your life circumstances, one or the other might be the right choice to do. And again, also, however it's configured in your chart, obviously. So yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day to stay open to meaningful conversations and creative self-expression. Yes, but there is there's more to the story because again, Mercury is also soon gonna station retrograde next week actually. So yes. And then on Sunday, July 13th, we have Saturn stationing retrograde in Aries. And this is really that Saturn-Neptune peak we are getting this year because Saturn begins its first retrograde in the sign of Aries. And this is, these stations can really give us yet another glimpse into, because it's like a gear shift, right? It's like, we're not driving forwards, we're shift gear in reverse. And so whatever happens around these stations, also with Neptune, right, there's something is brewing and we are getting yet a new taste of what Aries feels like with both of these planets being present in this sign. So yeah, there is a theme of rewriting how we are relating towards time. Maybe there's a disillusionment or re-enchantment depending on where you are with things. There's a boundary between fantasy and discipline that is kind of getting a bit blurry. Again, Saturn Aries wants to initiate, but Neptune kind of says dissolve. They're kind of opposing energies in that way. And so we're being asked to navigate personal responsibility inside the collective fog of things. So it is a bit of a strange and sacred pause that we are getting over the weekend on Sunday. The rules are softening and being rewritten. So And again, especially with that full moon as well, it's like whatever is crumbling right now, let it crumble and let it fall apart, because we are building a whole new era that we are entering into anyways. Like nothing's gonna be the same. Nothing is gonna be the same. We are not going backwards. This year we are getting Neptune in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, and Uranus in Taurus again for the last time. And then next year, new era, new fire air era is officially starting. So whatever needs to crumble needs to freaking crumble. So yes, this is a week of massive collective foreshadowing. Uranus has changed signs and Saturn is shifting directions, and Neptune is kind of just on the side, whispering dreams into reality with that Saturn there as well. And the Capricorn full moon is a checkpoint in our emotional maturity and a test of structure, vision, and faith. So be gentle with your inner scaffolding and let it adjust. The architecture of your life is being redesigned. And this is what I have for you guys this week. Let me know how you guys are doing, if you're already feeling this brooding full moon in the back coming up, how you're experiencing Uranus in Gemini. Has anything happened to you guys today specifically? Sometimes the ingresses can be quite loud. For me, this day was again quite chaotic and quite confusing. I do think that it is that way because Uranus moving into Gemini obviously is ruled by Mercury. It's ruled by Mercury right now that is in Leo, that it has entered pre-shadow period. And obviously Neptune in Aries has just also stationed retrograde. So I do think there is a bit confusion in the air right now around like how things are unfolding and happening. So if you have been feeling foggy and confused, you're definitely not alone. Let's just ride out this wave together, okay? There's probably more clarity that is going to come, but there is a big confusing undertone, especially at the beginning of this week, and just structures that need to fall away. So this is what I have for you guys. I wish you a lovely week, and I'm going to see you soon. Bye.